Santiago was 11 years old. He was in jail. The trouble had been brewing for a long time. Santiago fought with his teachers and argued fiercely with his father. He kept getting kicked out of school, but he didn't mind. He hated school. Santiago's memory was bad. This made it even harder for him to learn. Math was something he especially hated. He wanted to be an artist, but his father thought art was useless. Santiago was headed for failure. It's hard to believe what actually happened. Santiago won the Nobel Prize. That's like an Olympic gold medal for science. He is now called the father of modern neuroscience. That is, the science of how the brain works. I'm going to tell you about how it happened, but to understand Santiago's story, we first need to learn a little more about the brain. Over to you, Barb.
Your brain has a lot of tiny neurons in it. But even though they're tiny, neurons are the building blocks of our brain. To help you understand neurons, let's think of them as tiny aliens from outer space. Here's the eye of the neuron alien. Here's the arm. And its 3 legs are down here. Terry, how does this compare with a real neuron?
Well, here's something more like a real neuron. Here's the neuron's legs. They're called dendrites. And here's the neuron's arm. It's called an axon. The eye in the main body of the neuron is called the nucleus. Real neurons have more than 3 legs, many more. Neurons come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Look at those little knobs. They're called dendritic spines. You can think of them as being like toes that are scattered all over the space alien's legs. Kind of creepy, but hey, if neurons didn't have so many toes, they wouldn't be able to get their job done. Dendritic spines may be small, but they are really important. The spines help neurons receive signals from other neurons.
You can understand this by remembering our space aliens. When a neuron alien wants to talk to the next alien, its arm gives a tiny shock to the toe of the next alien. Neuron aliens show friendship by giving tiny shocks to one another. Just one of those strange things.
But it's surprisingly similar for real neurons. An axon ripples a signal along its arm called a spike. When the spike gets to the end of the arm, it causes a chemical to jump across a special narrow gap that activates the dendritic spine of the next neuron. This is called a synapse. If that second neuron fires a spike, it can cause a chain of spikes in the whole set of neurons, and it just keeps going. These signals flowing between neurons are carrying your thoughts. You can think of them as being like trails on your mental pinball machine. By the way, this is the only place where neurons are close enough so that they can actually cross, signals can cross from one neuron to the next. And there are a lot of synapses in your brain, 1,000,000,000 billion synapses. If I had $1 for every synapse in your brain, I would be a billionaire 1,000,000 times over.
Great! You now understand how a neuron passes along a signal and how you think. Well, maybe it's more complicated. There's some chemistry involved, but you've got the basics.
Yes. What's really interesting here, the more often a neuron shocks the next neuron, the stronger the synaptic connection becomes between them. It's like friends who become better friends because they talk a lot. Real neurons are like that too. Neuroscientists have a saying, neurons that fire together, wire together. Wiring together means that a brain link is being created. Learning means creating a stronger brain link.
When you're first beginning to learn something, the brain links are weak. There may only be a few neurons linked together, and the spark between the neurons isn't very big. As you practice a new idea, the synaptic links get stronger. This means the sparks get bigger. You can get more neurons with stronger synapses. The brain links get bigger and better. More complicated ideas can make longer brain links. People sometimes think of brain links as if they were mouse paths in a forest. The more the mouse runs along the path, the wider the path gets. The easier it is to follow the path. The fact that paths in your brain change and grow is called neuroplasticity. This fancy word just means your neurons can change. That's why you can change.
Now, back to Santiago Ramon y Cajal. Let's find out how he was able to change from bad boy to superstar.
I'm Barb Oakley.
I'm Greg Hammonds.
And I'm Terry Sinofsky.
We and Arizona State University wish you happy learning.
So how did Santiago become such an incredible scientist? It wasn't easy. We don't have a picture of Santiago as a teenager, but we do have him as a university student. One of Santiago's hands is always hidden in the photos he took of himself because he's the one pressing the button to take the picture. Santiago took one of the world's first selfies. Santiago's dad realized his son needed a different approach. His dad decided to show him what real bodies look like to encourage him to become a doctor. Being able to see, touch, and draw what he was learning about fueled Santiago's interest. He went back to learn the math and science he missed when he was a boy. This time, he paid attention. He worked hard to build the mouse paths he hadn't built when he was younger. Santiago wondered whether neurons can change when you learn, whether learning can upgrade the brain.
So, we have to stop here and ask you a question. Wouldn't you love to get an upgrade on your brain? Your brain links tightened? It turns out you get this upgrade every single day, or I should say, every night. Let's explore this for a few moments, and then I promise we'll return to Santiago.
When you learn something new during the day, the buds of tiny new dendritic spines begin to peek out from your dendrites. They really bust loose and grow, especially when you're sleeping. These new grown-up dendritic spines form connections with the axons of other neurons at synapses. Wow! This means that brain links are made while you're asleep.
When you're sleeping, your brain practices what it's learned during the day. We can see those electrical signals traveling again and again through the same sets of neurons. It's as if while we're dreaming, the space aliens have a chance to pass along some friendly, reassuring shocks over and over again. Another way to think of it is that during the night, your little mental mouse has a chance to run again and again along the neural pathway. Mice like to run around at night, remember. It's the nighttime practice during sleep that allows dendritic spines to get bigger.
When the dendritic spine grows big, the synapses get stronger. That is, the space alien can send a more powerful shock, and your brain links get a tiny bit stronger. This makes it easier to think about what you're learning. It's like walking on a nice, wide, smooth path instead of trying to push your way through the weeds and bushes.
Incidentally, just watching this video, if you're focusing that is helping new dendritic spines to form. Your brain is changing when you learn. Dendritic spines are like little lie detectors. The new spines in their synapses only begin to grow if you're really focusing on the new information you want to learn. Dendritic spines can't be fooled. They can tell whether you've been playing video games or texting your friends instead of doing your homework.
But it's important to realize that even after you've started to learn something and bring new dendritic spines to life, the spines will wilt and disappear if you don't use them to practice. Your synaptic janitor removes these dendritic spines because they're not being used. Use them or lose them.
Have you ever understood something in class, but a few days later, when you looked again at your notes, found yourself lost? This is because your synaptic janitors cleaned away the budding dendritic spines. After all, they weren't being used. To prevent this from happening, look over your notes as soon as you've made them. Explain the ideas to a friend. Make flashcards. Remember, brief practice sessions over several days are much better than one long practice session.
Learning grows in your brain, sort of like brick walls. Gradual layers, day by day. Learn and sleep. Learn and sleep. Practicing over several days allows for the new synaptic links to get stronger and helps the new learning really take hold. If you try to cram, your neural mortar doesn't have a chance to dry. It's poor foundation for learning. Practice helps make permanent, or at least a lot stronger. Next, we're on to the value of metaphors, one of the most enjoyable parts of learning. Then, to finish the story of Santiago.
I'm Barb Oakley.
I'm Greg Hammonds.
And I'm Terry Sinofsky.
We and Arizona State University wish you happy learning. Can you tell we like to use metaphors? But wait a minute, you might ask. What is a metaphor? A metaphor is a comparison between two things. One thing, something you're already familiar with, like an ocean wave. The other thing is something you may not be familiar with, like an electrical wave. Metaphors allow you to connect what you already know to the new concept you may be learning. This helps you learn faster. Obviously, an electrical wave is not the same as an ocean wave. We also know a neuron's not the same as a space alien, and a dendritic spine's not a toe. They just share some similarities that make it easier for you to understand certain ideas. In these videos, I'll just use the word metaphor. It'll make things simpler for us. Technically, though, I'm sometimes using an analogy or simile. Coming up with a creative metaphor is one of the best ways to learn a new concept or share an important idea.
When you think of a metaphor for a concept, a pre-existing brain link becomes activated. This older brain link allows you to more easily think about the new concept, using ideas you already understand.
Ultimately, this means that just by thinking of a good metaphor, you've already started understanding aspects of a new concept. Metaphors help you get key ideas faster. This is related to something called neural reuse theory. A metaphor allows you to reuse an idea you've already learned to help you learn a new idea.
At some level, metaphors stop working. For example, our metaphor of a space alien sending a shock to the next space alien doesn't explain synapses very well if you look closely. That's okay though, because whenever a metaphor stops working, you can just throw it away and get a new one.
Also, sometimes it's nice to have several different metaphors to help you understand a single idea. We used 3 different metaphors to help us understand how neurons connect together. We said it could be like brain links, or like space aliens shocking one another, or like a mouse path in a forest. Pretty cool.
In our videos, you'll meet many metaphors: robots, brain links, mice, and octopuses. The metaphors give you an easier way to understand key scientific ideas. Don't worry if a metaphor might seem strange. Sometimes, wackier metaphors can help you more easily open your mind to the new idea you're trying to learn. Wacky metaphors can help you remember better too. And now at last, to finish the story of Santiago Ramon Cajal and how he changed.
I'm Barb Oakley.
I'm Greg Hammond.
And I'm Terry Sinofsky.
We and Arizona State University wish you happy learning.